Hello, my name's Debbie Huxton and I'm a modern slavery campaigner funded by the Lichfield Diocese Mothers Union in partnership with Transforming Communities Together. And we're on day 7 of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. In the Bible, in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 12, verses 28 to 31, it says, "And one of the scribes came and heard them arguing, and recognizing that he had answered them well. And they asked him, 'What commandment is the foremost of all?' And Jesus answered, 'The foremost is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second of this, you shall love your neighbour as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these.'" In Jesus' teaching, we see that our relationship with our fellow men, women and children is inseparable from our relationship with God. The love of God and the love of our neighbours are two aspects of the exact same calling. In the Gospel of John, chapter 13 and verses 34 to 35, it goes on to tell us, "A new command I give you," Jesus said, "love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." And right now in 2020, we can commonly think of our neighbours as people that live next door to us, across the road, in the next street, in the surrounding area. But what Jesus meant is it would include all of mankind, every man, every woman, every child, everywhere, even our enemies. Jesus told his famous parable of the Good Samaritan to make it clear that love your neighbour means to love everyone, all people, not just our friends and our allies, but also our enemies. And so you can continue to read about that in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 to 31. But what is incredible about that parable is we see the Jews and Samaritans here mentioned. They had been enemies for hundreds of years. The Jews of Jesus' society considered the Samaritans to be ceremonially unclean, socially outcast, and religious heretics. And yet, in that parable, we see a Jewish man injured by a bandit. We see two of his own kinfolk walk past him and deny him and leave him hurting, possibly dying. And then we see a Samaritan who is not his kinfolk come by, recognise that this man, outside of the colour of his skin or his culture or his creed, needed help, that he was in trouble. And so he helped him. He patched him up, he popped him on his own donkey, he walked while this man who had been injured rode the donkey. He went to an inn, he got the man help, and he even said to the innkeeper, "Here's some money for the care. If it costs any more, when I come back this way, let me know and I will settle the bill." This man didn't need to do that because he wasn't a Jew, he was a Samaritan. And so this man, a Samaritan, took pity on the poor man who had been robbed and beaten, and he gave freely of both his time and his money to help the Jewish man, who was not only a stranger but also an enemy from a foreign country. So in this parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus challenges us to go and do the same. To reinforce that love your neighbour applies to everyone, Jesus extended the rule of love to even our enemies. In Mark chapter 12, verses 30 to 31 in our reading today, it says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and all your strength, and love your neighbour as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." When it comes to gender-based violence, that commandment still applies, that we are to stretch out our hand to those who are being hurt, to not neglect them and turn away from them, to pray for those who persecute them also, to pray for our enemies, to pray for their enemies, but to not neglect those that are being hurt and abused and exploited and controlled in some way, to not just walk past and turn a blind eye, to be like the Samaritan man and to go and help and see what we can do to aid the cause. And so we say in prayer, "Loving Lord, you have called us to love our neighbours as ourselves. Help us to treat all with dignity and respect as we follow Christ's example of selfless love. Amen.